Hello and welcome to this Past in Pictures video of Derby at War. My name's Richard Felix and I'm the founder of the Heritage Centre in St Peter's Churchyard here in Derby. Over the past 2,000 years there's hardly a single conflict that hasn't involved the people of Derby and Derbyshire. No more so than the Second World War of 1939 to 1945, where the city of Derby and its people played a far more significant role than we've ever been credited for. So settle back, give us your full attention and let us take you back 60 years to Derby at War.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
In 1939, when we saw Chamberlain coming back from Germany with his hand up, with his piece of paper, saying peace in our time. Well, a number of us used to meet together on different days playing cricket and football towards the time of the year. We said, right, that's it, there's going to be a war.
Derby, 1939, a major industrial East Midlands market town, situated almost in the centre of the country, and due to its location, had always been a town of great strategic importance, a crossing of the ways. The world knew then where we were and what we were famous for, the 3 R's, railways and Rolls-Royce. Here we were, situated in the heart of England at a time when our nation's cities, towns and villages were destined to fight for their very survival against a determined enemy who was prepared to destroy us all in a war that for the first time in our long history directly touched the lives of every man, woman and child. And of course at the very beginning, Derby made preparations for war. And here we see a census being taken of all the children in the Derby evacuation area. Throughout Britain, plans for the evacuation of young children from areas likely to be bombed were put into effect. This is Monday, the day after the war was started, and this gathering of Derby pupils of all ages outside St Andrew's Church in London Road, ready for the journey to safer parts of Derbyshire. And one of the most emotional pictures that you'll see on this video, children waving goodbye to Derby as the train moves out. And here we see Derby boys filling sandbags. Not all the Derby school children were evacuated into the district or available to attend school. So these boys from Kedleston Road School are doing useful work in their spare time, filling sandbags to protect ARP stations, hospitals and police posts. While of course younger children made sandcastles.
I'm the boy, or the lad that was in the photograph in the Telegraph, building sandcastles around the sandbags. That was our holiday then, because there was nothing else. And the Telegraph came along and spotted us and just clicked it and took the photograph. Away we went. The idea of the sandbags was to blast-proof the old wooden police box, which you can imagine would have gone.
And of course, other preparations were made for war. And under the defence regulations, the blackout came into force at sunset on September the 1st, and lasted for 2,061 nights. And we can see distinctive markings being painted at the entrance to Derby Museum in the Wardwick to stop people tripping over the steps at night time. Painting trolley standards with black and white stripes to stop people and vehicles from bumping into them. Traffic standards being shielded for the big blackout. And fitting cowls to the headlamps of cars. These prevented the headlights from being seen from the air. And corporation buses being fitted on the inside with shaded lights. After World War I, there was great fear of gas attacks, and here we see decontamination drills by the ARP at Kennings. You can see Queen Street baths in the background. Everyone obviously wasn't so scared, and these cardboard boxes containing gas masks were left on Trent buses. A young baby in a specially constructed gas hood. You can see Mum operating the bellows to get the air into it. As early as 1938, most towns and cities had practiced air raid alerts. There were various types of air raid shelters, trench shelters in parks, the use of existing cellars and vaults, including the basement of Halfords at the spot, the police station, the Free Library, and of course the Guildhall. And we're now coming down underneath the Guildhall. These were used as communal shelters during the Second World War. There's about 18 barrel vaulted rooms still preserved down here. Ladies and gents toilets built of course during the war. This incredible area here all shored up with huge oak beams to stop any bomb blast. How many Derby folk would have come down that obviously worked or were shopping in this area when there was an air raid warning? And of course it's still here, preserved just as it was. The ladies' toilet's gone, but never mind. And it continues right on here, turns left and goes under here. There's an absolute warren under here of old air raid shelters, just as they were during the war. You can imagine folks living down here. An old lady that came down here a few years ago with me on one of my walks told me that in some of these rooms there were cardboard coffins stored, flat packed, for use if there was a big air raid in Derby. But of course we got away without it, and we didn't need them. But they've gone. So have all those Derby folk that used to come down here and take shelter when there was an air raid warning. But the most famous of all was the Anderson shelter. And here we see sections of them being delivered to Derby houses. They became a familiar sight at the bottom of most people's gardens. And look at this, here we have an original Anderson shelter, still in situ in its back garden here in Normanton. On the 27th of September, the emergency war budget was introduced, petrol being rationed first. And here we see motorists being issued with petrol ration books at the Derby Borough Motor Taxation Department. Food rationing came next, 4 months later. The weekly allowance was 2 ounces of tea, 2 ounces of butter, 4 ounces of margarine, 4 ounces of sugar, 2 ounces of sweets, and 2 ounces of fats. Did it affect you much or not? Did you manage to get food or?
Well, we managed to get we managed to survive. You just, if you saw a queue, you didn't know what it was for. You used to go and get it, stand in it, and just hope that there was something there to eat. Anything sausage and anything like that you used to queue for.
So as soon as you saw a queue, you went and joined it?
Went in it, yes.
Hoping it was food?
Correct, yes. And the same with fruit and everything like that. I mean, you couldn't get bananas and oranges. That was for expectant mothers or children. They got theirs first. If there was any over, you might get some, but it was very few and far between.
Of course, rationing was the thing that we was worried about. Was we couldn't get the sweets. We never saw a banana or orange or anything like that. I think our rationing was about a bar of chocolate a month, and it was about 2 ounces of bacon. But at school, you did get your bottle of milk, and we used to get a substance called MOP, M-O-P. That's all I remember. It was just a treacly substance. You got a big spoonful of that every day.
Nothing could be wasted. And look at this marvellous shop window. Do you know where it is? It's the Midland Drapery in East Street. I wonder if they weighed in the magnet as well. And here's the lads doing their bit. Mum's even given them her sewing machine. And Dad's brought in his bits. And here we see a chap removing the railings for scrap at Gerrard Street School.
Then next thing that came round was they wanted scrap to make these guns, so all our railings had to go. So all the railings on the front of the house, they had to go.
In fact, most of the scrap wasn't used and was dumped into the sea. It was purely a public relations exercise. Dig for victory. As food supplies became less, everyone was urged to grow as many vegetables as possible. Schools took over spare land for crops. Here in March 1941 we see boys of St John's School on their way to their allotments at Mark Eaton. And the Women's Land Army parading at Belper. By the end of the war there were 59,000 women serving in the Land Army. 30,000 said that they wished to stay on the farms afterwards. Some of them did. Agriculture and food production was vital for the war effort, and the Land Army was formed to help farmers. Many of their workers, of course, were away fighting. Here's a Land Army girl driving a tractor bringing in the hay at a Kirk Langley farm. On the afternoon of the 1st of September 1939, the War Office issued instructions to all territorial units that a general mobilization had been proclaimed and that the troops should report promptly to their nearest depots. Look at this fantastic picture on the marketplace. National Service Demonstration, Derby, 23rd of the 3rd, 1939.
Of course, I was there at the very start as when we went into the marketplace and talked to people about these big guns, and they had a searchlight. And of course they had planes flying over and I picked them up. And that was my first thing. I thought, well, great, when the Germans come here, we shall beat them with all these big guns.
And here we have the recruiting office in the assembly rooms in the marketplace. National Service. You can volunteer for any service at this shop. Army volunteers arriving at Normanton Barracks, summer 1939. And here you can see some of the recruits inside the barracks. And this picture states, every convenience for cleanliness is a feature of the modern army. Here are two recruits enjoying their early morning wash. And here we can see some of the recruits square bashing at Normanton Barracks. And let's not forget the ladies. Here's a group of WAFs joining up outside the assembly rooms. Both regular battalions of the Sherwood Foresters served throughout the war. The 2nd Battalion, Derbies, were part of the British Expeditionary Force who went to France in September 1939. They advanced to Belgium and took part in the retreat and evacuation from Dunkirk.
I was in the Sherwood Foresters, 5th Battalion. My father was also in at the same time. This is just before the war. And Arthur, my brother, was also in it. And Joe Carley, a cousin, was also in the Foresters. War broke out and off we went. I was for a short time stationed at Kedleston Hall. Arthur was there, my dad was there as a Sergeant Major. Joe Carley had flitted, I don't know where Joe went.
My name is Arthur Patrick Kiley. My number is 4975635 and I joined the 5th, well it was the 5th Battalion Sherwood Foresters in 1937, Bonfire Night. And I got called up on the outbreak of war, and my first job was at the balloon barrage. You'll see here all the balloons at the back here.
Well, I'm Albert Edward Stedman. I was born at Langley Mill on the 18th of May 1920. I enlisted in the 2nd 5th Battalion Sherwood Foresters, B Company, TA at Ilkeston on the 1st of May 1939. On the 15th of July 1939, I transferred to the regular army, joining the 2nd Battalion of the Sherwood Foresters. On the 3rd of September 39, the battalion was preparing to go to France, so the whole of the recruit company was moved to Derby, to Normanton Barracks.
And here we see the British Expeditionary Force after arriving at the LMS station in Derby, coming back from Dunkirk. They're being taken off by buses to recuperation centres.
And we were actually young lads up at the station, and I think it must have been the Dunkirk, because these troops were coming in and we heard about this, and gangs of us ran up to the station, and these troops were being brought off the trains injured, taken into buses and whatever transport they could.
After that, of course, came Dunkirk. We went over there 6 times, yeah.
And fetched all the troops, lots of troops off, of course.
Yes, I got left behind on one occasion, but I came back on another boat, HMS Mosquito. Yes. I had to swim for it over there, but no, that's past history anyway.
So you wade into the water, you know. I have my prayer books here with all the watermarks in it. And that was it, I suppose. I don't know, I had no idea, but they did say, the ones with us, that we were in the water 4 hours. And we were picked up by this, well, we weren't picked up, this motorboat used to come round in a circle, towing others, and if you could get aboard, that was it. They threw a rope out to me, missed me by yards, and my mate, who had pulled down when we were shelled, he said, "I'll get you aboard, I'm going," and off he went. And gone. And I followed him. Now don't ask me how, but they cut my respirator off to get me over the lap, dropped me in like a codfish into the bottom of the boat and took us out to this boat. And this boat had a big skimmage net, and what it was a minesweeper. It was a converted Scottish fishing boat, and that was it. And so we got on that, and the captain stood. You're a cube, you're down in the room, and you're all officers and men, all ranks, just like a cube. Wherever the boat went, you went. And he said, "It'll take me 8 hours to reach England the way I've got to go. If anybody panics, I'll shoot them down as they come." And we set off. I don't know how long. He said we'll be shelled and we'll be bombed.
By the end of the first week of June 1940, the evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force was complete. 336,427 servicemen were brought safely back from France and were landed at English ports. All were tired, hungry, and many were wounded, but they were safe. While most of the British Expeditionary Force was making its way back to Dunkirk, A Company, 5th Foresters, Derby's own TA unit, was defending a little village called Ancheville. They were commanded by Captain Gordon Butler, whose father had been Mayor of Derby in 1939. Sergeant Major Kiley was sent on a suicide mission with his platoon into the valley to try and stop Rommel's advance guard from coming through. They were cut to pieces by machine gun fire and artillery from across the river. 37 Derbyshire lads were killed, including Sergeant Major Kiley, who left behind in Derby a wife and 9 children. On the 60th anniversary of his death, I took his children over to France, to a corner of a foreign field which is forever England. And here is some amateur video of the event and the wreath-laying ceremony. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Amen. He was from Hege. There were 6 mates joined up. They joined the Foresters. I believe they were all miners, but they joined up. And 1 came back apparently. But Frank was one of 4 brothers. 3 of them were in the Foresters. Dennis, Tom, Dennis and Frank. And Frank was killed. My aunt, on hearing that he was missing, presumed dead, went stone deaf and never heard another word. She was his twin. Frank was a miner. He had an odd peculiarity. Even at his age, he always used to suck his thumb. And apparently, even though he was in the Foresters, he still sucked his thumb. There were 6 mates, and they all joined up at the same time on the same day, etc. And 1 came back.
Our backs were against the wall and a German invasion was imminent. The local defence volunteers were formed, LDV, known at the beginning as Look, Duck and Vanish, but that was soon to change. And here a picture of the Chaddesden Home Guard passing the Gloria Cinema, going up Nottingham Road, coming up to Cherry Tree Hill.
Working at Rolls-Royce, we was in what we called a reserved occupation, but we was encouraged to join a defence organisation which we call the LDV. The LDV was formed to report parachutists dropping down and also to report lights that were on during the night during the blackout. And we often had exercises, one of which involved one battalion attacking another battalion, which usually took place at a place called Dalbury Lees.
The beer flowed.
And the beer wasn't very available, but I'm afraid somebody managed to get a barrel from the pub there. It didn't go very far between 400 of us, but still.
It must have been the Black Cow, of course, at Dalbury.
It was a Black Cow. I should imagine it was a Black Cow, yeah. Now, when the chance of invasion was over, a lot of them guard were transformed or transferred into what we call the ACAC division. Now this was, I think 80% were transferred, and this was for the defence against aircraft.
The ARP organisation, or Air Raid Precautions, worked with many other people including the police, fire and women's voluntary service, who at the beginning of war looked after rest centres, canteens and those people that had been bombed out. Derby Firm's ARP test, employees of Qualcast Limited running to take cover in air raid shelters during the firm's tests at the works in Victory Road. Here a crew operating a searchlight attached to a gun position on Derby Racecourse. Note the barrage balloon and the sound detector in the background. And Derby Racecourse again, this time with Royal Marines manning an ACAC gun. And you can see Beaufort Street Corporation housing estate in the background.
And of course then we started to see the big guns coming on the racecourse, and we was down there looking at these big guns. There was a very big gun on there called Big Bertha, and when that used to blast off, well, you know, it shook the place.
And a downed balloon. They often broke free or were struck by lightning, and you can just see the council house on the right hand side of the picture.
During the air raid, one of the barrage balloons had got loose and the cable had wrapped itself around the trolley bus wires at the front of the house, and the cable had caught round the corner of our house, and the wind blowing the balloon made it have a sawing effect on the corner wall of our house, and it cut a groove into the wall about 2 inches long and about 1 inch deep.
Possibly Derby's worst night of the war was the 15th, 16th of January 1941, as seen by the damage in these following pictures. Later figures estimated 20 people were killed and nearly 50 injured, with damage to over 1,500 homes in a raid by, according to German records, 49 aircraft, dropping 59 tons of high explosive bombs and 1,500 incendiaries.
January the 15th, we came home from work with the smoke screens in front of the house, and then the sirens went. We used to go down there most evenings when the sirens went, as soon as we come home from work, and take our tea down with us so that we wouldn't get disturbed. This particular night we'd been down a couple of hours, and my father said, "Oh, I'll go and mash a drink." He went into the house to make a drink. He had about 5 minutes, and then we heard this drone of the planes, and the next thing we heard this whistling noise, and then there was a very, very loud crash. Our shelter that we was in, there was my sister and I and my mother and the next door neighbours. It caved in. We didn't know how we was going to get out. We was just buried in there. I can't recollect how long we was in there. It wasn't too long before we heard my dad's voice. It took him a while, but he managed with his hands digging, trying to get us out, and we was inside trying to get through the door. Well, eventually we got out and we was on the edge of this big crater, which you could put about 4 semi-detached houses in easily. And my dad's first word said to us, "Get up to the first aid post." My sister, well, we all went up to the first aid post. By the time we got up there, there was 1 or 2 people, when they'd heard it in the vicinity, gone on duty. And of course then the casualties started coming in. Although we was casualties, not injured, it was just shock. But we managed to help with those that were injured.
At least one of these bombs landed on the LMS station. Troops are seen here searching the rubble at the station next day. A passenger train was followed by a single German aircraft, and when the fireman opened the boiler fire door, the glow shone through the glass roof of the station and lit up the target. There is a story that the body of a policeman who was killed while shielding a young girl was found buried beneath the rubble. And they even got the baseball ground, and here you can see blast damage to one of the stands. I think it's the Osmaston end. And here a concert in an air raid shelter. This is Abbey Street School, December 1940.
In all the air raid shelters under town, we used to nip down there as soon as it was dusk, nip into Irongate, not far from where I lived. The sirens would go as soon as dusk came, and you were sent down into the air raid shelters. And I think I remember the one under Barlow and Taylor's, where you used to go down there singing and fella playing his piano accordion. Of course, when you got home, I scuffed around the ear off the old man, because where have you lot been?
Alistry First Aid Post, you can see the rescue team with the stretcher, the post doctor and nurses, and at the back, 2 ladies of the decontamination squad. And I wonder why there was a water shortage. Perhaps it was due to burst mains after a bombing raid. The Luftwaffe chose September the 15th, 1940, Adlertag, Eagle Day, to bring the RAF to its knees. But they seriously underestimated the RAF fighter strength and the resolve of the British people. During the Battle of Britain, all of the Spitfires and Hurricanes were powered by Merlin engines, made in Derby. Derby's very own Battle of Britain ace, Sergeant Pilot Alan Feary. He went to Abbey Street School and worked for the Treasurer's Department in Gower Street in Derby. He joined 609 Squadron flying Spitfires and made his first kill on the 12th of August 1940. It was an ME-109. He was unfortunately shot down on the 7th of October 1940, aged 28. At the bottom of his grave you can read, "One of the few in the Battle of Britain." On January the 11th, 1949, at 2:40 p.m. in the afternoon, a window was unveiled in the front hall of the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby. To the pilots of the Royal Air Force, who, in the Battle of Britain, turned the work of our hands into the salvation of our country. Hitler's directive to smash the RAF should have made Derby a major target, as at this time most of the British fighters were powered by Merlin engines made in Derby. They did hit Rolls-Royce just once, on the morning of July the 27th, 1942, at 8:01 in the morning. A single Dornier bomber, flying at only 150 feet, came across the coast, contouring in, following the railway lines. 12 seconds before he hit the target, he snagged the wire of a barrage balloon and started sliding down it. The cutting edge on the front of the wing managed to sever the wire, and the pilot regained control of the plane, dropping his stick of 4 1,000-pound bombs, but only one hit the factory, the other 3 hitting houses in Hawthorne Street and Davenport Road. He then pulled the plane upwards into the clouds and disappeared back to Deelen in Holland. Standing today at gate number 4, you can still see the new brickwork on the damaged steel store. This incident caused the largest loss of life in Derby during the whole of the Second World War, with 22 people killed and over 50 seriously injured.
When in 1938 war clouds were gathering over the continent of Europe, the Rolls-Royce factory in Derby assumed a new importance. Home of the company since its inception in 1906, it was from here that one of the United Nations' greatest contributions to victory was brought to fruition by a picked group of designers, engineers and executives under the able leadership of Sir Arthur Sitgreaves and Mr. E.W. Hines.
One reason we got off lightly was Derby is in a saucer, and the smoke screen covered us over. Derby's best-kept war secret was called codename Starfish, decoy sites at Ticknell, Amberston, Swarkston and Aston-on-Trent. After the victory of the Battle of Britain, we were ready to fight back, and here we can see a picture of War Weapons Week in the marketplace and a parade of vehicles on War Weapons Week, London Road opposite the DRI, going right past my dentist's. The wreckage of an RAF plane, the pilot of which was killed when he crashed on the railway embankment near Pear Tree Railway Station in Derby.
Yes, I saw it hit the embankment and burst into flames. And we were told afterwards, the pilot burnt to a cinder, we were told. We even knew the man on the hosepipe who was leading the auxiliary fire service. It was George Simmons, who used to be the boiler house man at Richton's Tannery for quite a few years. But yes.
You saw that happen?
I saw it happen, yeah. Yeah. One of my earliest memories, that was, yeah, one of them.
Doesn't this just sum up Derby at war? You can see the Weights and Measures office in the background and the sandbags in front of Flint's the solicitors. Derby and Derbyshire servicemen fought and died in all the major actions throughout the war, in the air, on the sea, and of course on land, from Norway to Anzio and from Alamein to Singapore. And I'm now standing outside Arthur Bates's bungalow at the Allenton War Memorial Village. Arthur was captured by the Japanese in Singapore in 1941. And there's a plaque on every house here in the village And this one says, given by Ford and Western Limited in memory of all employees who gave their lives for their country, 1939 to 1945, and in recognition of those who served in the fighting and civil defence forces. And of course, what a lasting memorial to the folks of Derby is this memorial village here at Allenton. Treatment, I mean, did they beat you? Did they bash you out with the rifle butts?
You got rifle butt end, bayonet end, kicked, smacked, standing to attention up with the hands up in the sun, put on bamboo, lying on bamboo. They found this bamboo which coming through the ground. They lay you on there because bamboo grows quick. That'll go through you in a night probably. Anything for torture. And the sweat box you'd got. You got everything, got all the torture tricks.
And they'd pick anybody for that? Or was it for punishment?
No. They just go along the line and just come, that's it. You don't know who's going to get it. Just take it out of somebody.
Just for the sheer pleasure of it?
Sheer pleasure.
Because I mean, once they got rid of there were less people to work.
I don't know.
So they weren't bothered
They got plenty of people. And they weren't worried about the less people, they got plenty there. There was too many, the more they killed, the better they liked it.
My goodness. So what on earth must you, I mean, how do you live day by day?
Well,
with knowing that it could be you tomorrow?
Well, that's it. It's your own stamina and will that kept you going. And you looked after each other. Comradeship was marvellous. I mean, you looked after each other when you was ill, got malaria or anything, because if the Japs saw you, they tried to cover each other up to help for the work, you see. Yeah. So they got the work ratio done. You got so much set each day you've got to do.
And those that fell below that?
Oh, yeah, you'd had it. You'd had it. There's no such thing as falling below, it's got to be done. See?
My goodness. And I mean, do you remember some Derby lads that were bad, that were done away with, or a lot of them?
Yeah.
That never came back.
Certainly mates. That's it. We'd be with them one day, working side by side. Next day they're gone.
The Derbyshire Yeomanry played a large part, being the first regiment to enter Tunis, and also received the surrender of the Italian First Army. And here's a telegram from Derby telling of that victory. Citizens of Derby have heard with pride that the Derbyshire Yeomanry were the first regiment to enter Tunis, and on their behalf I send you heartiest congratulations, best of luck and good fighting. Hind, Mayor of Derby. And here a personal message from His Grace the Duke of Devonshire, Honorary Colonel of the regiment. I have heard again and again of the regiment's most gallant and distinguished service during the Tunisian campaign. Warmest congratulations to you and all ranks on the triumphant crowning of your efforts by your entry into Tunis. Derbyshire is very proud of you. In 1942, the United States of America came into the war. And here's a colour party of their army passing the saluting base in the marketplace during the opening of Derby's Salute the Soldiers presentation in 1944.
Another thing was the Americans. When the Americans come back in later in the war, that was great, especially for us lads. I mean, it was, have you got any gun, chum? You know, and of course, if you went around the town, there was hundreds of kids around the town asking for chewing gum and that. But we used to go to the Five Lamps, not far from where I lived. And these were the homes of the American officers. And obviously, they had more chocolate and than chewing gum. So we used to get bars of chocolate off those.
And here we have some incredible footage of an American Air Force crew who came on a boozing spree to Derby from an airbase near Grimsby. They brought with them a gun camera taken from a crashed aeroplane to record their evening in Derby. One of the favourite haunts of the Yanks was the Globe in Irongate. There were always fights both inside and out, and eventually they had to segregate them by having one night for British servicemen and one night for Americans. and some wounded soldiers at Derbyshire Royal Infirmary. This caption says, "Wounded soldiers entertained." Customers of the Greyhound, Derby Lane, subscribed to give this party of wounded soldiers from the Derbyshire Royal Infirmary tea at the Travellers' Joy Cafe, and afterwards a concert. It's got to be Warship Week, and this is a picture of the Women's Voluntary Service rally in the Central Hall. The lady on the right-hand side was Derby's first Lady Mayor, Councillor Elizabeth Petty. And where is the Ark Royal now, Mr. Churchill? 11-year-old Pamela Kershaw, with 8 Derby members of the crew of the Ark Royal, to whom she was distributing gifts at Sammy Ramsden's Plaza. Derby adopted HMS Kenya. Here she is under attack during a Malta convoy. And now in for some TLC, after her bows were blown off in Operation Pedestal in August 1942.
I joined up with Arthur and we used to run with the Penelope. I used to go ashore with both of them. I was with Ron when he went, and Arthur, well, we did Sicily, Italy, we did Salerno, and then we went up to Anzio, and sadly that's where Penelope, she was sunk. Arthur went with her. That was in 1944. 2 brothers together, the names on the War Memorial at St Paul's. I was with them both. Arthur did get off. He got off the Penelope, but the sea was on fire.
I don't think the folks of Derby and Derbyshire have ever really been credited for the amount of effort that they put in during the Second World War. From Mulberry Harbour to Bailey Bridges, Merlins, powering Spitfires, Hurricanes, Lancasters, of course, the Dam Busters raid. Barnes Wallis, of course, who came from Ripley, created not only the bouncing bomb, but the tall boy bomb, the earthquake bomb. He contributed to the sinking of the Tirpitz. He created the Wellington bomber, and he even went on to create a swing-wing fighter. We also did a lot of refurbishment of aircraft at the Carriage and Wagon Works in Derby. But before the ladies were allowed to go into the fuselages, they had to be cleaned out by the men. And while the men were away fighting, the ladies had to step in. This is the Auxiliary Fire Service's Nerve Centre. Telephonists in the private exchange group of Derby Fire Station dealing with messages from fire patrols and recording the location of outbreaks of fire due to enemy action. And this is the final stage up the ladder to the top of Newton's Limited of Derby. This is the only pillbox left in Derby. It's not actually a pillbox, it's an observation post, that's why it's as high as this. It was used for spotting the bomb blasts around the town during the Second World War. And what a commanding position up here as well. You could, I'm sure, defend the old A61 both in and out of Derby from this position. Look at these duckies. Women bus conductors employed by the Trent Traction Company. It's not very often you see inside a balloon. The caption says, "There's plenty of living space inside a barrage balloon where these WAFs are carrying out repairs." A picture of the LMS Women's Carters at St Mary's Goods Depot in 1941. Normandy, 1944. Military policemen talking to 2 ATS police women.
At the time, the V1 and V2 were coming over, bombs from Germany and thereabouts. And in the meantime, I'd put the bonds in to get married. I was on guard on June 6th from 4 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock. And I noticed all the planes coming over from somewhere. I didn't know what was going on, so I rang in to the command, headquarters. "What's all going on with this thing?" He says, "I'm sorry to tell you, it's the start of the invasion." This was from down south. I says, "Well, I'm getting married in 2 days' time." And they sent for the captain. So he pulled me one side, he says, "Right, Kylie, get off quickly." So I packed my bags like lightning. This was at 6 o'clock on the morning of the 6th of June 1944, D-Day had just started. Well, I really shouldn't have gone. I mean, that officer could have been, I was going to say sacked, it could have been chucked out or shot. Anyway, I got all my things together and dashed out quickly and got out of the way. Now that fella probably saved my life, because over went the boys, my own friends, and I went and got married. And as I got married, the same day I was married, I got back home to West Auckland with the wife, as she was then, and there was a telegram from the government, not the government, from the police. You must report back to your unit immediately.
And the Sherwood Foresters, arriving back in Derby for their great welcome on December the 3rd, 1945. And a Thanksgiving service in the cathedral, attended by the Bishop of Derby. And there were great celebrations in the marketplace, and here we see a great crowd of people celebrating either VE Day or possibly VJ Day. And many people attended street parties. Here we can see one in Leonard Street, and another one here on June the 10th, 1946.
Of course, all the war come to the end, and I remember the fireworks and the bonfires, VE Day and VJ Day. But you know, we thought it was great. We didn't realise what the serious part of the war, but I actually thought it was a fantastic time to be a young lad.
On a Derbyshire hill at Cryche, overlooking 8 counties, stands a beacon, a memorial tower to the dead of all wars, and there is a plaque commemorating the 1,520 Sherwood Foresters who gave their lives in the Second World War from 1939 to 1945. Both the Derbyshire Yeomanry and the Sherwood Foresters were given the freedom of the borough of Derby for their efforts during the war. Here we see the Duke of Devonshire being presented with a certificate from the Mayor of Derby. And here a photograph taken on the marketplace during the Freedom celebrations on July the 20th, 1946.
Hello everyone at home. This is your daddy speaking to you. It must be a grand surprise for you to hear my voice again after all this long time away from you all. I'm quite well, but longing for the day when I shall see you all again. Hello, Francis, darling. Lots of love to you, sweetheart, and keep smiling. I'll be on my way to you soon now. Is Jean there listening? If so, tell her I have heard she's quite grown up now and quite a big girl. Hello, Tommy. What mischief are you up to now? Have you made that wireless set yet, or is it a new car you're building for me? Is Dorothy there too? This is Daddy, darling, sending you lots and lots of love. Hello, Anne, dear. Not forgotten you either. You're still my little baby, although you must be quite a big girl now. I hope you all have a lovely Christmas with lots of presents from Santa Claus. Well, goodbye for the present, Francis, darling. Write as often as you can. Cheerio for now. Lots of love to everybody at Derby. Remember me to Granddad and Grandma. God bless you all. Keep you safe till I come back. Bye-bye.
During the making of this video, we have interviewed and recorded some incredible stories about the war from Derby folk. We couldn't include them all on this tape, but their accounts are too good not to be shown. And so we have produced a video entitled Derby at War, The Interviews.